the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is an AVNation special. My name is Tom Albright. I'm your host. In 2017, Samsung began showing off what they called the cinema screen. It was shown at CES and CinemaCon that year. Earlier this year, they showed off the technology at Integrated Systems Europe in Amsterdam and had the first 2 installations globally, again, under the name Cinema Screen, first in South Korea and another in Switzerland. In late April, Samsung unveiled the first North America installation of the technology and gave it a name, the Samsung Onyx. AVNation was among the press covering the event in LA. Today, we're catching up with Nick Conti from Samsung about the reception the screen has received thus far, what theater owners are doing to promote the screen, and how integrators can get trained on the installation. Mr. Conti, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us this morning.
Since the opening in LA, what's been the reception of the Onyx?
I mean, the reception is fantastic. It's every time we talk to the theater staff, they keep telling us how many people are calling and asking, where's that screen? What show times are on that screen? They're telling us that, a lot of the shows are sold out. Obviously, that's heavily content dependent, but a lot of the shows are sold out. People are definitely noticing a difference. It's been, from the general movie-going public, it's been an extremely good reaction.
Now, when theater owners advertise their movies on the screen, they're advertising it as being on the Samsung Onyx, correct?
Not currently, because the exhibitor wants to give it a few months test. They really wanted, because right now they're just charging the same ticket price as the other screens. So they wanted to see what the uptick was with absolutely no marketing, kind of an all things being equal test. And I think it's been extremely successful.
We talked about this at the opening, but describe what the typical installation process is from both the Samsung side as well as the Harman audio system.
In terms of installing the screen, prep work is obviously key. Unlike the screen itself, the whole apparatus with the screen, the speakers, and the steel frame weighs about 8,000 pounds. So when you put it in front of an auditorium like that, and especially when it's consumer facing, it's key that you get got a structural engineer to sign off on the installation. So it's about load bearing, how it's braced to the floor and the back structural wall, and making sure it meets all the seismic requirements, which was definitely done for that auditorium. That particular frame that you saw in Pacific Winnetka was 3 bolts at the back of the steel frame. It was bolted 3 times at every joist at the bottom of the frame. And then with unistrut going to the structural wall, it was also braced vertically. So in actually 2 positions, or I should say 3 positions, 1 at every catwalk in the top. So, that screen is absolutely going nowhere. So, that's the first thing, is you have to make sure from a design and planning stage to ensure that you have the original blueprints of the auditorium and make sure it's structurally sound, and get a structural engineer, especially when it comes to seismic zones, get them to sign off and provide an official stamp. The second thing, it takes about, anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks to install the whole apparatus, including the sound. Actually, the sound is the easiest to install from a hardware standpoint. So the key is, the sound installation doesn't really differ from a regular sound installation for the most part. The key differences are those reflector horns. I don't know if you saw them on the side of the sides of the auditorium. They're just below or above the first surround sound. So the key point is to get those in the right position vertically on the screen, because you want to mimic where the screen speakers used to be. So in terms of the high frequencies and the horns, they end up about 2/3 of the way up of through the screen. So making sure those are in the right vertical position, then you have to angle them to the right horizontal position. And that ensures that the bounce you get from those high frequencies ends up in the right place in the auditorium, and you don't end up with too much crosstalk. The third is really tuning the more about tuning and calibration. So calibrating the screen, the first time, takes a full day, 8 to 12 hours. And that's making sure that all the colors are correct. You got to have a color meter, et cetera, et cetera. that actually with a trained technician can do it in less time, much less time. But it takes roughly about 8 to 12 hours to calibrate the image screen itself the first time. And then audio tuning the room, you have to make sure that the reflector horns are time aligned with the screen and make sure the de-elevation filter is implemented correctly. So right now on our first couple installations, Harman's staff is doing all the tuning of the room, and the Samsung staff is doing all the calibration. That we have actually spent last week opening up this project and this product to many different cinema dealers. So whereas, previously we were working with just one, we're opening that up to a much wider market. So we're going to have Samsung in September is going to open up a training facility down in Irvine where we can teach our our dealer partners and SIs, system integrators, how to do the calibration, how to, tune the room, things like that. So they will be fully trained. By the end of this year, we should have quite a few of our partners fully trained and certified on this screen.
So they can not just advertise, but also say that they are Samsung and Harman certified for these systems.
Absolutely. So right now, that we're working with about 14 different dealers or 14 different cinema integrators that we're working to sign up right now. There are quite a few more in the cinema business, and we're definitely open to everybody. I mean, Samsung is, always has a mantra of non-exclusivity. So we are definitely open to everyone, but just as a matter of workflow, we're focusing on the top 14 right now.
It was mentioned during the presentation and actually talking with some of the members of the press there that cover the cinema industry exclusively. It was said that the Onyx could change the way movies were made. In what way?
Let me qualify that a little bit. It could change the way movies are finished. So not necessarily made from movies will still be shot the same way. I mean, there's a lot of advances in cameras. Red is doing a great job. ARRI is obviously the industry standard in terms of picture quality. But in terms of the way movies are made, most of that will stay the same. It's more about the post-production process and color timing process. The screen is, because it has an 18-bit 18-bit depth at grayscale intensity, the screen can actually reproduce 281 trillion unique colors. And a lot of that has to do with the brightness, because at higher brightness levels, it accentuates different hues and color. So what we're giving to color timists, cinematographers, and directors is a greater palette to color time the movie. So this is all obviously HDR, right? So currently in the cinema business, I'm not talking about home entertainment or TVs, but in the cinema business, there are really, is only one de facto, not even like kind of a set agreed upon standard, but one de facto commercially available standard for high dynamic range, which is just simply, as all of your listeners know, is just a greater range of colors to see, right? So currently you have Dolby Vision out there, which is a spectacular product. I mean, they have certainly pushed projection, I believe, as far as it can go. But the Dolby Vision product can only go up to, as far as peak brightness, 108 nits, which is 28 to 30 foot lamberts. I don't know the exact calculation. But, our screen allows color timists to have a palette that's 3 times greater than that. We can go up to 300 nits. We can actually even go up to 500 nits, but those are special settings, and we're not necessarily promoting that. But we can go up to 300 nits, which is about 88 foot lamberts, which simply means that we give given the bit depth and the massive amount of colors that we can reproduce, it simply gives color timists and directors and cinematographers a much greater palette to color time their movies. So you can, they'll be able to see all the details in the shadows. They'll be able to get many different colors of versions of each primary color, and just to, like I said, a greater palette to express their creative vision on. Will it change the way movies are shot or sound mix? Probably not. But in terms of color timing and the visual representation of the screen, it will give them a much wider range. So if they want, they can color time the movie up to with a max brightness of 300 nits, but they could go anywhere in between them. So if they want to do, I don't know, 117 nits or 153 nits or 237 nits, it's totally up to them. As long as it's below 300 nits, our screen can handle it without changing of any settings.
I think that's actually some of what we saw at the Roundabout production facility earlier in the day before the presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the questions that came out actually from colleagues of mine and people that I know when they saw that I was out in LA for this opening was, how do I get this in my house? I'll ask you the same sort of question. The CEO goes to a movie and witnesses it on a Samsung Onyx screen. They walk out of there and she goes to her technology staff and say, I want this in her boardroom. I want this in the boardroom or in my house. How do they do that?
Well, step one, they would need to find a 40-foot wall that is not being used. In terms of, unless you have the size and the space, you're never going to be able to reproduce this. Because, a part of the, even though I can sit here and talk to you about tech specs and this and that, a huge part of this is you're looking at a 40-foot LED wall, right in front of your face with all these colors being reproduced. So the size, in this respect, size does matter. And, the size of the screen makes a huge difference. Now, that being said, Samsung has tons of different products. I'd like to highlight one specific product that I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with, the wall. So the wall is a direct view. Yeah, first of all, they'll never be able to duplicate this experience on any LCD-based panel because it's a completely different technology. This is all direct view LED. Each pixel is independently lit and colored with an RGB red, green, and blue diode. LCD is just not that way. So, but the wall product that Samsung has coming out this fall, on a smaller scale. So it's not the same experience. I want to be very clear. You're never going to get the same experience on a smaller scale. But on a smaller scale, if they don't mind the lack of size, then they can definitely reproduce all the tech specs and color on the wall. The wall is an insanely gorgeous product. It's actually a tighter pixel pitch than the Onyx screen. The Onyx screen is a 2.5 millimeter pixel pitch. The wall is a 0.84 pixel pitch, which simply means you can get closer to it without seeing the space be 2 pixels. Yeah. So obviously you need that for a home entertainment environment. When you go to those smaller screens, the sound becomes much less of an issue. So you can actually, there's a lot of, JBL makes a line of products called JBL Synthesis, which are fantastic. You still get the cinema sound in a much smaller footprint and a much more aesthetically pleasing environment. So, if you don't mind, you can never recreate the experience, but if you're looking to somehow copy it on a smaller scale, then it's definitely the Samsung wall and the JBL Synthesis would certainly give you the quality, but on a smaller scale.
Very good. Nick Conti from Samsung. If someone is interested in getting more information about the Samsung Onyx or how to become an authorized dealer and installer, how do they do that?
They would contact me, actually. nick.conti@sea.samsung.com.
Nick Conti from Samsung, thank you so much. My name is Tim Albright from AVNation TV. For more information about AVNation, our weekly news programs, and other shows, go by the website avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.